So in a world where, everybody's trying to grow their audience, trying to do something, and trying to actually be a successful entrepreneur in some kind, you, I guess, June, 5 million followers now on Instagram, 8 million overall. Was it a fluke that thing has happened to you?
I think fluke may not carry the right type of connotation, but I think luck definitely played a huge role. I would be lying if I sat here telling you that I was able to manufacture my audience up to this point in time. It just wouldn't be real. I think what had happened is that luck played a huge role. But if you show up every single day, you know for a fact that when luck does come knocking at your door, that you'd be ready for it, that you could take advantage of it. So my whole story is that I haven't missed a day of posting in the last 5 years. I think that that's showing up. And then on days where the virality hit and certain pieces of content got more engaged with, then I was able to take advantage of those moments to continuously build an audience. And I also think about the idea that you don't post for the immediate moment. You post so that when an audience does come onto your page, they have this established credibility that you've been posting, that you've been here. You're not somebody that has just risen to a certain level of fame. So that's what I believe had happened. Luck absolutely played a role, but I did show up every day, I think, to meet that.
So you're saying that you posted content every single day for 5 years. Like, how's that even physically possible? Because surely it's just not possible to be able to create the content, right? To be able to do that.
Yeah, and I also come from a biomedical engineering background. So I was studying for both my bachelor's and master's simultaneously. So it did make it extremely difficult because I just didn't have the time. But I really do think I had this unfair advantage in the very beginning because I thought about content completely differently. I didn't necessarily think about quality to be highly produced. I thought about quality as in what is the perceived value from the audience. And if you look at my very, very beginning, I was creating content about fashion because I thought that made me look cool. And so I was sitting in my basement doing outfit changes and literally couldn't get my post to look natural enough that I sat there doing that for hours on end. And then I would see my views and they would be like 100 or 200. And then there's one period of my life where I was going through a really difficult season. And then I picked up my phone in my car with horrible lighting and I spoke to my camera almost as if I was speaking to myself in that situation. So it's just an encouraging word. And then that actually did a lot better. So I started to realize that quality had nothing to do with my lighting, quality had nothing to do with how I looked on camera, but then everything to do with understanding your audience really well. And so once you do that, a lot of the quote unquote time that it takes to create content is no longer there. So I spent about 20% thinking about filming and editing and posting. I spent 80% of my time, I think, really getting to know my audience and then making content that's minimal, viable content, as in you strip away all the fluff and you just target that exact pain point. And that's how I've been able to do it.
The thing is, though, with your content, though, what is that, though, right? So 5 years is such a long time. Surely in that time, you've changed what you post or what you post about. To even do anything for that long period of time, right? You got to still enjoy it. So what's the content been, though, that I guess, how have you managed to do that? Strategically speaking, right? 5 years of consistently posting. It's too long as a time, right? To get that right.
Yeah.
What have you been doing, I guess, your approach to be able to pull that off?
For sure. I think one avenue of creators who just start hear the word niche and they think about a singular topic in which they only speak through. You can never do that for 5 years because I grew so much in terms of my personal life.
So it could be fitness, for instance, right? Some guys posting the same thing for years and over time, it starts to slowly not become a thing. So you're saying essentially not to do that. So it's not a singular thing that you're making content about. You make content about yourself.
That's exactly it. I think when people hear the word niche, they do exactly what your first example was, but it makes it impossible because you pigeonhole yourself into one topic and it sucks the joy out of creating content. It makes it extremely difficult to come up with new ideas. And the reality of the matter is there's so much nuance to you as a human being. As you evolve, you want to still be able to create content. And people give that suggestion when they don't have the experience as a creator, right? Someone will tell you, hey, this is how you grow really fast. You speak on a particular topic. Of course, you'll grow more fast that way. Of course, because people know you and you can do certain SEO to be able to get that audience engagement. However, what does it look like in 6 months when you really don't like creating that content? Or what happens if you get so particular that somebody comes in and does the exact same thing and takes your audience, etc.? But I really do understand the importance of creating content about you and you becoming the niche. And I also think the second aspect to that is I did not care too much if my post didn't perform well on a given day, right? You have to collect a body of work to be able to reverse engineer and understand what works and what doesn't work. If you're constantly worried about, hey, this is the exact number of views I need in order to feel like I'm fulfilled in it, then you don't let yourself experiment with new content. So then I would have only been stuck, let's say, for example, as I graduated, if I was only creating content about studies, where does that leave me in 2-3 years from now? I become irrelevant or hard to connect with my audience because I'm no longer a student. And so I experimented with new styles of content even while I was in school. And that made it so much easier once I was out of school to say, you know what, I'll just double down on the other things that really works as well. So I think that's what allowed me in terms of some perspective.
I guess just playing devil's advocate there, like, is that a hindsight? Like, now you know that, so you're saying it? Or in that moment, did you also, I guess, play the long game, I guess is what you're trying to say, right? That if you are creating content about yourself, you can stay creating content for the long period of time. I guess, did you actually think that at that time? Or is that something that you're saying it now because of where you got to now? Because that's what a lot of people will think, right? A lot of people will naturally think, I need to create content on a certain thing because then it's the easiest way for me to get to work. But I guess what you're saying is that will work, but stage 2 of that won't, because you'll be known as the guy who does the one thing. And then you won't be here 8 million plus followers 5 years later. But yeah, I guess, what were you thinking at that point in time?
Just today's post. That's exactly what my head was on. You're right that it's hard when you're looking back to say you thought of something exactly the way that it had become. And that's not true. It never looked that way. Yeah. But the idea was, if you actually start posting, this isn't something that you can't recognize for yourself. Like, I had no creative background, but when I was in it, it's so easy to tell that when I was creating fitness content, even for, let's say, a month's time or 2 months' time, I didn't enjoy it after 2 months, right? And same idea when I was creating content about my fashion, I didn't enjoy it 2.5 months down the line. But as a creator, you can see it. From a consumer's perspective, it's hard to. Once you're in it, you also start to realize, all right, who are creators that people look up to? Who do I aspire to be more like? And you look at them being creators, and I remember Christian Guzman was the very first one of mine because he was in that fitness content, but then he branched into a lot of business-related content. And I was like, that's cool. Then he started showing his relationships and his family, and that's what you fall in love with. You fall in love with the creator behind the scenes. And so that's what I was trying to emulate. Did I know exactly that it would turn into this? Absolutely not. But if I could focus on the day of and just start to post on any one of my interests or any one of how I viewed my audience at that time or anything that made me unique, it just over time compounded into me becoming the niche. I think what's awesome is that now I can speak through it that lens and say, just do it that way first so you can fast track your progress.
You know what's crazy is, so what at Gemflow, when we're looking to work with the creator, normally we're trying to work with, like, I guess we're trying to find the best, like, creators that are already quite established. And one of the first things we actually check for and we train the team to check for is like the qualitative stuff. So quantitative, we first look at, obviously you have the right audience, etc., and demographics and all that stuff. But then there's the qualitative. And we always say, if you can't see someone's content and get to know who they are as a person, meaning like, who are they? Do they have a partner, a dog? Where do they live? Blah, 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 meaning like them, then they are not doing such a good job through content, because that means the audience doesn't know as well. So it's almost like what you're saying. So if someone is the niche themselves, you will be able to quickly grasp who they are as a person through that content, versus something who's someone so curated who creates a topic about a certain thing, they're oblivious to that. So the depth of the connection with the audience is not the same. So it's interesting you say that, because it's literally how we've always thought about it, is that, yeah, I guess if you can't see who someone really is through their content, they will not have basically the right audience to monetize, is what I've seen.
Absolutely. And I think also that becomes a skill that's acquired too. Often I have these conversations with creators and they say, I feel uncomfortable talking about these elements of my life. And I say, well, the greatest part about having personal brands, you dictate what you can show. Even that becomes a skill. When you start to be able to speak through the lens of your own experiences, when you're first taught to create content, you think about a particular topic in which you would teach upon. Instead, if you can show how you do it, it is a completely different shift of mind that seems so obvious when you're talking about it, but for a creator, it's hard. But any creator that's watching this, it's an acquired skill. Don't give up on the fact that you only spoke about it through this lens where it became more instructional. Over time, you have to start experimenting with this style of content, because not only does it connect more, but it literally performs better in the long run.
You know what's crazy about that is that I could probably draw an exact correlation between basically the more you show online, the more essentially money you can make. Because the more people are invested in their lives. If you think of the biggest celebrities or whoever you follow or you know about publicly, you generally would know a lot about their personal lives. So I know there's a fine line between, but I think you're right. People learn there's a skill of what to show about your personal life that still doesn't give away your address and blah, blah, blah. So, it's like not safe. So the real skill there, like direct, the more you show and the more people fall in love with you, the person, then the rest of it basically like takes care of itself. And which is like the hardest thing, but it's just the truth. Even for businesses, right? Any brand that you love too, if you know the people behind it, if you know the CEO, if you know what they stand for, if you know all of that stuff, you're that much more invested. So yeah, it's true.
I have a question then, since we're talking about success stories and how to actually get to that. And I think a lot of creators won't necessarily know how many stages there are to your journey because they're only focused on the current moment. Now, you know very well that I've been very fortunate enough to make over $2 million off of my personal brand. You know that very closely. So in your opinion, having worked with so many successful creators, what do you think worked?
I think obviously for the first time we met, which was, I think about March 2023, I think. So it's almost 2 years, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I guess, I think a couple of things. Obviously, just for context, for anybody watching, we for a bit at Jamflow did like a thing where you could book like a consultation call, and I don't know how you found this, but Jun ended up booking that call. I got on that call, and essentially that's how we first met. But I guess from the very first time we met, I could tell that you're quite a diligent person, and I think in the creator space generally, I think that comes from your like educational background. That's how you've trained to learn and operate. So I could see like the thing there. But I guess in reality, we met, and that was it. But I guess you took some advice that I said, and you kept at it, kept consistently posting. I think you had a few 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
And then from there you grew to a few million the next time we spoke. But I guess honestly why it's one, I think they're showing up and being consistent, but being like analytical with it. I think just doing the reps is like one of the worst, like I think pieces of advice, I believe, because it just means you're doing the same thing again and again. Because technically a rep is you are lifting the same thing again and again. This is more about like tactically doing it. So you are posting, you're watching, is it working, you're doing it again. I think your ability to do that consistently, the feedback loop by yourself and looking at it and judging it and then trying something else, looking at it, judging it, trying something like that, trial and error, I think is what been one of the biggest things. And I think outside of that, just the monetization like strategy, the fact that very first thing you monetized well was you started creating content about studying and then actually selling a one-off product to just monetize that. A lot of creators I see, like they want to do something that they've always wanted to do. Maybe even for you, that's a fashion brand. So they think like, I need to do that.
Right.
Not realizing there's steps to it.
Yeah.
Because there's steps to personal branding monetization, basically. Like you got to do these things first so you can do the eventual thing, which probably will make you the most money. But you have to go through this to get there. And because you need to make money, you need to prove to yourself that you can make money. Also, what I've seen in my data is that the sooner someone starts selling something, the sooner they get customers, the sooner you get like a deeper level connection than a follower. Because obviously if someone buys something from you, they're trusting you in a different way. I saw this one of my early creators like Grace. We sold in 2016 and we set up a Facebook group and all the customers are going in there. And that was the first time I saw that like, oh, we've moved people from Instagram into another group and all these are now customers. This is like so much more powerful in terms of like building like your own audience, community or whatever, that this nurturing and how they're going to champion this person, surely it'll only benefit this person to grow over time. And then that happened to be true because we had these like 60,000 girls that are going around the UK telling everyone about this person and their thing. Pretty much like I'm sure the people in the mentorship for you today, they will be telling lots of people that they meet in person in this and that, or they had an amazing call with you, they'll tell other people about it. That effect obviously comes from being a customer. Because a lot of people, when I first started out, were like, if you sell something too fast, you're like just selling out too fast. And I think it's the opposite. That it's the way to like basically build that relationship. So I think that was a big move. I guess what prompted you to think like, that's what I want to sell at that time?
It's such a great question. And you set it up so well because the idea of me maybe opening up my own fashion company, right? It sounds great. I feel like that's probably what a lot of people my age think of. And it absolutely is really cool, but it really does come from a difference in perspective, right? Even that is a very selfish thought of mine to say, oh, because I like fashion, I'm going to create a fashion brand when nothing that I've been producing towards my audience was solving a fashion problem. And so I would be doing it for ego versus exactly what I said in terms of what I derived quality to be, the audience's perception of value. That's exactly what I thought about too. It was, if anyone is listening to this that wants to become a better creator, just interact with your audience more. It's such a weird concept, right? Because you think about, oh, I should just post more. I should learn how to create better produced content. It's the complete opposite. If you want to gain your first 10,000 followers, speak to 1,000 different people that have seen your content. And that's what I did naturally, just because I didn't come from a creative background, but I did come from an engineering background. I knew that there were human beings on the opposite side of the screen. And so when I would get on calls with them, when I would literally spend an hour each day responding to DMs, when I go through comments, you would just collate all that data. And so what I'd done was, after speaking to you, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I was like, I got to prove myself. I got to do this right. And so in that, I had then spoken to my audience immediately after. I literally went on my story and said, you know what? I am thinking about doing something in terms of a product. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know I want to do it for you guys. So tell me what I can help you with. Mm-hmm. And up to that point in time, I obviously collected a lot of data in regards to everything prior, but this was a different style of data. It was, okay, now there's going to be money in return, but I don't want to do merch. I don't want to sit there and sell you a hoodie because that's not going to give you any value 2 years from now. I want to give you something that could hopefully transcend your life and do it in a very accessible way. And so that's what I did. It's just as much as I do minimal viable content. We know it's like minimal viable product. I really understood exactly what my audience needed. And in those DMs and lives, I was like, cool, you need help with studying, you need help with productivity, you need help with early career building. I can solve that. And then when I did it in a PDF format, most people would say, I can't believe you sold a guide. But if you think about in terms of people and their workout guides even, why does that do so well? It's because people need to know how to work out and it transforms their lives. Why do people need to study well? Because it will transform their lives. And so I started to package that information. I sold it, and I even did a lot of promotional things to make it extremely accessible. And it completely transformed my idea of what monetization looked like. Because when you think about money, you think about, all right, it's a very selfish game. I need to figure out what looks cool. I want to position myself in a certain way. But if you can literally solve any problem from your audience perspective, and how do you do that? The same way I grew my audience. You just talk to them. And after more and more conversations, now I'm in a position where you can ask me, hey, will this content perform well with your audience? And I'll say, either I've already done it before or I'm willing to try, but likely the answer is this, because I've already done X, Y, and Z content that I can point to. I think a lot of creators get into this mindset where they're only fixated on one thing, and then they think that that's what has to take them to the next level instead of actually asking the audience who's the one receiving the value.
I think it's just the fear, right? It's the fear of people will unfollow me, people are going to think, you're trying to sell me something, etc. But I think if you build the wrong audience, then that probably does happen, because people are like, I followed you for this, and now you're trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
And that's when that does happen. Because if you're being very like value driven from the very beginning, then it works. So I guess we've seen it, right? Obviously, since then we started working together. That 2 million, I could probably break it up into like half of it approximately is like the student stuff, because we did a physical version as well, which is sold on Amazon, etc. And then we moved on to, I guess, the mentorship which you have today, which is a subscription business, which is just growing since then. Where then obviously that's continued because those students have almost like either graduated with you, or then you have graduated as a student and you have moved on with your life. And now, because you make content about yourself, you are the niche, it's very easy to continue the business. I think, yeah, I guess going back to your question of like, why do you think it's worked, is mainly that because your monetization is linked to where you are in your life and the value that you can give people. It's all like linked really well. And I think you understand that well, because where it doesn't, and I have like data for this, is that your life changes. You now have had 2 kids, whatever, but you're still like selling fitness, where it's saying you need to exercise 6 times a week. It's just not attainable. So the audience has grown up with you, so they're also like, your content is not right. Or the younger people won't follow you now because you are just not the person they would follow. So people find themselves in this mode where the audience has left them almost, or they've changed and you didn't change alongside. That's what I've seen with a lot of people. So the truth is, as you get older, as you mature through your business journey, you'd have to keep adjusting, keep adapting. Would be the main to make it work.
From your experience working with all of these creators, and you have seen creators who have, and I know this because you tell me, just kill it, like make life transforming money, and then get to a point at which that they can't continue making content about the evolutions that are ongoing. What do you tell them in that position? Obviously, you're so close to them. You're working with them from an agent client standpoint. How have you been able to try and get those individuals? Because you've done it even with me, like you've pushed me to create more content about X, Y, and Z things. But how do you actually tell a creator who's been doing something for so long in one way to try and experiment with other content? And do you feel a bit of pushback?
Yeah, I think it's tough in reality. It comes down to different like personality types and individual goals. Obviously, everything we're talking about here for a normal person, right? 8 million followers, $2 million plus like sales you've made in your business. It's insane, right? So for a lot of people, they never even thought that's even possible. So there's a moment of they're just content and happy with where they are. So then it's just tough because like it worked. I've made good money and I managed to buy myself a house and blah, blah, blah. And now I have good residual income coming in, even if it might be going down, but they still feel like it's okay and I can like be happy. So those situations are just tough and you can't really like, I can only push so much, you try so much because ultimately they are happy and that's not the goal. But on the flip side, where people are like, yes, I do want to know how I grow from here, etc. And then it is about just going back to, who's the audience now. We do a lot of stuff like surveying audiences. That's a great way of us knowing. And a lot of times it's a shock, like had no idea the audience is 25 to 35. We thought it's younger.
Yes,
Or we didn't realize it was actually working moms or it's just working women. Because it's just that is unknown. Because in Instagram or whichever platform, the demographics are like so top line. You don't know who are they, where do they live, what problems do they have. So I think the biggest secret we found is like big audience surveys to understand that, to then be like, okay, this is interesting. So let's try to make content that solves one of those things.
Yeah.
That's a great way to, I guess, re-inform yourself outside of, because the truth is comments, DMs and stuff is like such a top line layer to try to understand what's going on. And for someone that has millions of followers, it's so hard to be able to like look at that because it happens so fast. So yeah, I think for us, that's like the main way. Actually, I have a question for you. Do you think like coming from like an underprivileged background, like hurt you in all this? And like what would have happened if maybe you did it, in terms of the growth or whatever? It's an interesting point in general. What do you think?
In the beginning, I always thought it was a disadvantage, right? Because you only know what you know and you always think that other people have it better. And it's so interesting because it all brings back to our moment and being able to now work together. A lot of times you'll say things along the lines of, a lot of creators don't work as diligently as you do. And in my opinion, I'm like, I don't understand that. It's just how I'm wired. And it's the fact that if you saw what I saw at the age of 13 to 14 when my parents got divorced and my mom left overnight to a completely different country and we struggled that much financially and we have mental health problems in my family, we lost our home. Like if you saw what I saw at that age, in no way are you thinking that that's an advantage, right? You keep thinking about, oh my gosh, I have so much catching up to do. But then you get wired differently. You become callous to hardship. You become somebody when someone tells you, hey, we need to get X, Y, and Z done. Cool, no problem. We'll do it. Even if that requires me to stay up all night, I'll do it. It's just how I believe that behavior has been programmed in me that now I see it as an advantage. And so I wish I could go back to my younger self and say something along the lines of, no, it's actually good. Like, embrace it. Be in that pain a little bit longer, because I think that makes you completely a different human being over time. And so being in a disadvantaged background gives you perspective. So I get this question all the time, Shan, all the time. I think this is actually probably the number one question I get asked. They say, how in what world could you handle the pressure of biomedical engineering, doing your bachelor's and master's, working on Project Novartis, going ahead and posting every single day, building out a business and all that every single day simultaneously? And I'm like, pressure. If you saw what my dad had to do when I was growing up, that's pressure, right? It is. If you were in his shoes and you had to then literally, while going through all that he had to go through, still go to work for 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, just so that kids could have food on the table, that's pressure. And so I think when you come from that type of background, it gives you a completely different perspective. And there's this quote that Inky Johnson says, perspective drives performance. The way that you view what you do affects how you do what you do. So when I'm in that particular spot, and there's times where things don't go right. Like there's times where I'm in exam seasons where something goes wrong with the business or something goes wrong with the launch, but it's a blessing, right? I wish that
It's such an interesting thing, right? Because you're absorbing the pressure that you saw your dad go through, let's say, and you've now, it's like because you saw that happen, it's allowing you to do things that you would not have done normally. It's a bit similar for me. So my dad, he didn't have shoes till he was 9 years old. So he didn't have any shoes. So it's like they're like dirt poor, born in the village, no electricity, like the poorest you can be. And yeah, so he used to like walk to his school barefoot, no shoes. I think 9 years old, I think when he got his first shoes, and I think someone stole his shoes when he first got them. Um, and like family's been so poor basically. And I've seen that because my story is that I was born in the UK, but when I was 4, I moved to Pakistan. I lived there for like 8, 9 years. So I saw like what being poor is like. And so it's weird because it didn't happen to me. Even your thing, like technically, yes, it happened to you, but you were a child. But because you hear it or see it right in front of you, weird, I think you can have, either like it has a wrong impact on you, or it could have this impact, which I feel like both of us are a bit similar, that because of what we've seen or been around, it's made us that much more don't care about a lot of stuff that most people would care about. Um, and I guess in my own perspective, that's what it is. And then for my dad to go from there to basically, he like self-taught himself English to then basically become a doctor, to then move to the UK, and then became one of the most senior, like decorated doctors like in the UK, and which is should not have happened, basically. Like, and his parents died when he was 17. But basically his life story doesn't make sense because from if like where they came from is like the slums basically to there. But I've seen that. That's why I'm like, yeah, whatever I'm going through, it's just not that hard, which I guess almost makes my thing not that bad. So like I can deal with it. But yeah, I guess it's very similar in that sense because like it's like family stuff. But weirdly, like it didn't happen to me. It happened to my family, or they went through it, and it makes me like harder because of it. Maybe because of the upbringing. So yeah, I've always thought that too. Like my background and where I come from, or being like, there's only 5 brown kids in my whole school, and I was one of them. It's always been like I felt like the outsider in almost everything I've done, and but I've always used it as like I know because I know that I know I have to work harder, so I'll just do it. Versus making that into that's why I'm not getting the job, that's why I'm not getting this. Because the reality is I didn't get, my dream was obviously I went to university to be an accountant. I didn't get any like graduate scheme, like nobody would hire me. There's always like this big problem. While I was trying to raise money from a business, no one would invest in me. It had to be, essentially a brown investor who was very like me, who then believed in me to like be the first check in, and then it started to snowball from there. So I guess in my life too is weird. Like I've always known that, so I've had to like just work that much harder naturally. And I guess if anyone's listening to this, need to somehow turn into a superpower, because I do think it is, versus playing the blame of like, oh, because I have less money, or because where I come from, because of this, that I can't do X, Y, Z. Yeah.
I think one more point to that before we move on. It's the idea of longevity, right? We see a lot of people reach a level of success, but they grow complacent because they never had that perspective in the first place. So a lot of luck, as I said in the very beginning, plays a role in this. If you do get lucky at the right given time and you do accelerate to a certain position of your life, if you didn't have that type of perspective, what grants you the opportunity to keep on going? Usually nothing. And that's why we see so many big creators then fall off, because they grow complacent in the fact that they had no perspective of what it was. So they'll stop posting content, right? And then their businesses will go away. And then they only realize the type of consequence it has like 2 years down the line, and then try to return back to creating content. I think the idea for anybody watching this, to your point, is have that perspective now, because it compounds over the long run.
I guess, is it true that you ran every single day? Was it for 9 months?
I believe something like that, yeah. And absolutely true. It's something that I didn't necessarily talk about too much, except for all my Instagram stories. I would just update my logs. But I was not a runner. I hated running. I played soccer growing up, and I absolutely despised any time that I had to run. But I have this system where for the last 5 to 7 years, I've been doing 4 wins. It's a mental win, a physical win, a spiritual win, and a self-accountability win. And throughout my time, I've always, and there's even content back then on January 1st or January 7th, 2021, I believe, where it shows my whiteboard and it shows my wins, because I've always taught in this mindset of how can you have holistic discipline? How can you continuously have success looking internally? So when I was doing my runs, it just became a physical win for myself. Every single day, I'm at least doing 45 minutes of intentional movement. And it just was what I was doing at that point in my life. I've been doing physical wins for so long, but the idea is, can you continuously challenge yourself in a way in which it's feasible? So it wasn't necessarily like I was doing 4 miles and trying to run a 7-minute mile each time, right? I gave myself the freedom to say, you know what, I might do 40 minutes and I might do a 10-minute mile per, and then I would get better at it over time. But it's just so cool because the 4 wins is something that's completely mine. And I love that, right? I have now an entire audience of probably thousands of individuals every Wednesday. We do Wednesday wins, and they post their 4 wins. wins, which is awesome. We have a community in which there's 2,000 plus people in right now doing their 4 wins. And every single day they come into the community and showcase the fact that they're improving internally. And so I get in these calls and you see people like Cheska, like Harvin, like Rosie and Mayte, all in different backgrounds. They're from different countries. They're at different ages, and they can all understand that it starts internally first. So with everything that we just said about garnering perspective, how do you do that? You continuously reflect internally and work on that. And so it's been really, really cool. So yes, I did run, I believe 9 months where I was doing 3 to 4 miles. And then at the very end, to cap it all off, I ran a marathon.
How, this is an interesting now, I guess, how did your performance, like how much did it improve in those 9 months? The actual running performance?
I think at the beginning, I was very sore. So I would run it and then try to recover in time. And I wasn't recovering as quickly as I thought it would. And so in the very beginning, I was probably running, I think like 12-minute miles. And then I got to the point where 9-minute miles for 3 or 4 felt really easy. So I was doing 3 miles, I think, for the first 4 months. Then I amped it up to 4 miles. So yeah, I think my endurance improved a lot, and I could feel it in terms of how quickly I was recovering, that I wasn't straining myself as much, and my times were going a little bit faster. I was definitely not doing something that was like incredibly impressive as a runner. I don't think I'm a runner, but the idea was, can I continuously improve in that capacity?
Was it always, I guess, first thing in the morning? Like when were you doing it?
No, it was anytime I had a chance, right? Like that was when I was still in school. That's when I was still traveling, when I went to London, when I went to Korea. Like that's exactly what I was doing like every single day. So it's really hard, but you just make it work.
I guess it seems like everything you want to do in your life, you love doing it consistently. What don't you that's not consistent? You know, you're running every day, posting content every day. Now, it's super impressive. I think it's a great, I honestly believe like you have such an amazing like future ahead because of the way you are. And then obviously keeping that focus. But the truth is, you know, a lot of people have dreams of achieving similar success, let's call it. And what's happened to you, right? All your life, you were like going to be studying and get a job. I remember we had the conversation when you were like, shall I still do my job or shall I do this creative thing properly? And I'm like, yes, you have to do it. So I guess the question is like, do you think like anyone can be a creator? Because you know, you've done the complete opposite to what you ever thought you would do growing up, right? Which was like education and then job. And we had that conversation where it was like, what shall I do? And I was like, you have to go all in. It's the biggest opportunity in a lifetime. But yeah, like, do you think anyone can do it?
Yes. And that has now been a mission.
I think someone else can do it ultimately, right? Because it seems hard from the outside.
I think it's hard from the outside because you see the numbers, right? You see the whole 8 million. That's how I'm introduced every single time that I do a podcast. And it seems overwhelming. But I have a mission, and that mission I've been saying in my content now for the last like 2 months or so. At the end of it, I say that I believe anybody can create content, and I'll show you how. And that's what I really believe, because as you put it, I come from the complete opposite, right? I did nothing creative growing up at all. Moreover, biomedical engineering is the opposite of creativity. You're literally doing something extremely rigid. I got really good at following the rules. And then you try and bleed into something that's creative, and it's completely opposite.
Sorry, Jim, it's funny. So technically, you're an engineer and I'm an accountant, but you know.
Yeah, and we're here in the creative world, right? And I think what happens is that so many times we look at content to be something that's only reserved for a particular style of individual. I hope, if anything, you can look back at my old content and see that it sucked. Like, it was horrible. It was not at all coherent. But the idea was, you don't have to come from a creative background. You can learn as you do it. And as you put it, I think that what became a superpower was the fact that I was speaking to my audience consistently, and I was also continuously reverse engineering. So if you can understand the right type of framework, and that's what we teach in my Create framework, and I've been talking about it now for a while. The idea is if you can do that and have a system in place and have the right perspective, I believe literally you can be a doctor, you can be an accountant, as you said, you could be someone in biomedical engineering, you could be an artist, a teacher, you could be anybody and still be able to create content. Because you know why? There's other people in the world doing the exact same thing. So you're telling me that those individuals aren't online? You're wrong. Those individuals are also consuming content. And who are they going to resonate best with? Somebody that's actually doing the thing. So I think anybody can create content, but it does take me to like hold their shoulders and shake them a little bit and say, you can create content because you have something to offer.
Okay. No, I believe, look, it's the biggest opportunity of a lifetime because the upside is just too big. If you compare it to the upsides of other things, if you are going to go and study and get a job versus trying to learn how to make content, post, and find other people who are going through the same stuff that in life or you can provide value to, like the upside is just greater because you have, if you build an audience, you have the ability to get to hundreds and thousands of people with just a post. It's just too powerful. But what's crazy to me is that people still like dismiss it in a normal world, that it's just like not a fad, but like it's a thing that's going to come and go. It's like, it's not for me. A lot of people say it's not for me. I'm like, but you want to start a business. If you say to anyone, would you love to have your business one day? They'll be like, yes. I would say like 9 out of 10 people would say yes. But if you say to someone, do you want to be a creator or have an audience? You wouldn't get the 9 out of 10 saying yes thing. But for me, it's like the same thing. Because if you do build your business, you want to be behind the scenes or whatever that you think it is. One way or the other, you need people.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to pay Meta lots of money in ads to get those people.
Good point.
And then you're going to be paying a PR agency trying to get your name in an article. Or then you're going to be paying or trying to do other things that you need to do to grow your name and your authority in an industry. Or you could just build the audience. But everybody would love to have it this way because like, I don't want my face out there. I don't want this or that. But like, you are just making all the excuses to not go after the biggest thing. But then you should also know that whatever thing you were going to try and do, it's going to be the hardest thing. That's when you even see a Mark Zuckerberg who was behind the scenes, even though everyone's always known his name, is now full on personal branding, is doing collaboration with UFC people, is doing this and that and everything, because he knows I didn't build my personal brand like Elon or other people have, and now he's trying to play catch up. You know, at a billionaire level, they understand the importance of building audience, showing who they are, what they're up to. Because for even him to be making like jiu-jitsu content, it has nothing to do with Facebook.
Exactly.
Why is he doing that? Right? He's the niche. He's like, I'm going to make content about what I'm interested in. Or he's, I don't know if it's called wakeboarding, like, surfing on the water, like making crazy videos. Like all that stuff is for that same. So yeah, I'm quite passionate about it. Obviously it's my business, but it's crazy to me that, everyone in the world should be making content. I want to have some business success.
I also think, and I love the examples that you've given, where the traditional influencer that we once knew, I think is dead, in the sense where the reason why so many people are taken aback when you say become a creator, because what do they immediately think about? Influencers. And influencers carry this connotation of an individual that flaunts their lavish lifestyles, and that becomes cringy to watch. And when you're older, you're like, yeah, I don't want to be doing that. The reality of the matter is I've personally spoken to doctors. Like I've spoken to people that are nurses. I've spoken to people that are engineers, and they all say, I need to build a personal brand because of X, Y, and Z things. They all recognize the power of it. The reality of the matter is it's still early. People that have value to offer, I'm not talking about the people that just have these rich lifestyles and they're just lucky enough to post about it. No, I'm talking about people that are really doing whatever work that they're doing, but understanding the power of an audience, are still doing it too. And I hope that gives people a level of confidence. It's like whatever you're doing, a brand's going to be absolutely powerful for you to take the next stage. And it's no longer the traditional influencer type. I think it's an actual value-driven style of content.
I guess that brings me to, create a college, and I guess our mission.
Yeah.
What is the vision for you, I guess, in this new business that we're looking to launch? Quick context for everybody. We're launching a new business called Create a College. We're going to essentially educate the world on how to become a creator, because it's a massive, like I said, it's the biggest opportunity of a lifetime. But that's what we've been working on. Jun's been here in Dubai, and we're currently sitting in our studio. So yeah, what's the vision?
It's to build a college for creators, and it just fits my exact background so well. And we've spoken about this, where you should be creating content, but you should also be building businesses that are you. It shouldn't be a derivative of that. It should be exactly what you're doing. And if I think about how content has transformed my life, it has completely transformed every aspect to my life. I've been able to take care of my family in a way that I could have never imagined. So I'm literally in Dubai, hanging out with you, creating something that I truly believe in. And so content creation is that number one opportunity, but I think I approach it from a completely different lens, because I don't come from it where I had all this type of background to be able to then produce high quality content. I actually understood what content looks like for the average person, and I was able to build my success that way. So when I teach it, it's so much more accessible, in my opinion, right? Somebody can watch it and be like, yeah, I can do that too. And that's what we see in my mentorship. That's what we see in my content. People come to my DMs and say, you've given me the confidence to start posting. Why? Because you actually look like me. You sound like me. You've come from the same background as me. So I think the vision is to literally create the best educational platform for creators that transcends beyond us, that actually leaves a statement in regards to the creators that it can impact. How can we teach them about each of the platforms? How can we teach them about how to create quality content that I perceive to be? And then also, how do you monetize properly? If we can do that properly, somebody comes through our program, learns all of those bits and pieces, and then comes out of it as a polished creator. I think that's the coolest thing ever. So I'm extremely passionate about it.
Yeah, I guess the truth is anyone can sell a course, and this is not about that. This is actually genuinely trying to create, like, I know it's called college, but ultimately like an institution of like teaching you the game of content creation and the business of being a creator, right? And that's going to take a lot of work in terms of, because we need to like teach you so many different things to be a holistic, complete creator. And everything that's been discussed so far today, right? To be able to build the audience the right way. How do you become the niche? How do you create content and build businesses alongside your own personal journey? Literally the thing that we've been discussing, I guess, is the goal with it. Because there'll be a lot of people who think like, oh, it's just another program, just another course. But then the reason, I guess, for us to do it is because of the context. You know it from a creator. I know it from working with creators and doing a lot of business with creators. I think it can be done. And look, that's why I'm like so excited about putting this whole thing together. You know, we're almost done here. We got to go to Austin, got to finish up all the stuff there, then hopefully wrap everything up and we'll launch it. But yeah, no. Love the convo, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.